Hello and welcome to the King Heroes Journey podcast. My name is Beth Martins and I'm here with Don Lester today, who I've followed your work for a bunch of years already and seen a variety of different things. I think that the very first time I saw you and heard about your work in your book was through Andrew Kaufman. So early on in those days, he was flagging your, or not flagging your book, but waving your book around. That was what I was looking for there. And before we get started, I'm going to go live on Rockfin, and there is a link in the chat if you guys can see that. So yeah, we're live on Rockfin now. And if you prefer Rockfin to my new YouTube channel, the old people have been asking me, where's your YouTube? It has been canceled. So I have a new one, and I would love if everybody could subscribe to that one. It's a little slow in getting that one up and running. I'm on Rumble as well, but I think it's not going to happen today for that channel. We're also on Facebook, and X is live now. So people don't really find me over there as well. Are you pretty shadow banned, Dawn, yourself?
Some posts seem to kind of be less popular, shall we say, or they don't kind of get out. But it's very odd. I mean, sometimes, these posts get out and sometimes they don't. I mean, I haven't really been active on YouTube literally because they keep deleting our videos. So we've been uploading to Odyssey.
Nice.
But I'm sort of, with new things that I'm doing, I'm trying again on YouTube, so we'll see how long that lasts.
Right. Yeah, it's quite a shell game. I do kind of lust for the good old days when algorithms were based on traffic and people's, actual interest in things. That was so nice. And we didn't know how good we had it.
Yes, I mean, sometimes the YouTube videos, don't last an hour or a couple of hours or something like that. I don't think we hold the record. Some people, it's like minutes and they've just gone. So, I mean, it's absolutely crazy. But yes, the first interview we had with Andrew Kaufman was back in, I think, March 2020. So it's pretty early on. That stayed for a while until things started to get a little bit heated, shall we say. Things warmed up, and then that just disappeared. Well, I mean, from YouTube, but fortunately we had that and sort of uploaded it elsewhere. So it's just, trying to keep things out there. And there's always a balance of, are you careful with what you say so you stay on there, or do you say whatever you want and, it disappears? So I think it's finding ways to get the message out there. So you just have to, we'll just tailor the language and play the game until it stops being necessary. And at least we're out there. And as you say, kind of, just gaining traction so that we can reach the people we want to reach to share the information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just do whatever you have to do rather than complain or lust like I was doing. And so if you guys aren't familiar, do come and say hi in the chat if you're watching from one of the streams. This is the King Heroes Journey podcast. I'm the host, Beth Martins. This is a platform for people to speak their truth and have no fear of, yes, we can face censorship. Yes, we can face opposition. Yes, we can have people hate us and our family turn away from us and all of that kind of thing. But the people that I host here are really more loving of their freedom than they are afraid of the retribution that comes when you speak your truth. And I know, Dawn, you are a pioneer in this arena. She's a researcher and a writer, just to let you know a little bit more about her. She's the co-author of What Really Makes You Ill. Who is your co-author again?
David Parker.
David Parker. Okay, yeah, thank you. Why Everything You Thought You Knew About Disease Is Wrong, published in December 2019, very timely, as well as two books published in 2010 under the pen name NOR, which I'll have to get you to say what that is if you like. Dawn's current work is focused on deepening her understanding of the meaning of life, as well as learning to integrate the knowledge that we are all aspects of the divine and living our lives as free individuals. She is also developing new ways to share her understanding with other men and women so we can create the beautiful world we know is possible. So Dawn is writing articles on Substack. Here's a link to her Substack that you can go and visit as well. Oh, didn't stay up very long. And so let's get started. Today, we're actually not going to talk about that very popular subject that has been so well covered. Not that much, but of course, if it's organically relevant in any way, don't hold back at all. We will talk in gibberish just to preserve ourselves in the few platforms that are still highly censorable here. If you guys don't know, then all of my live videos get uploaded to my podcast channel. So if you prefer to go and listen in audio, they're current. Now, these days, they get uploaded within 24 or 48 hours after the live stream. And so welcome, Don. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me. It's great to talk to you. Thank you. I came across your journey a while ago. So, and I kind of thought, oh, yes, that rings bells, only slightly different circumstances for me. So, which I'm sure we'll get into.
Exactly. Yeah, that is the topic. So the hero's journey, your hero's journey. We're all on a hero's journey, whether people know it or accept it.
Mhm.
Even refusing your calling is part of the hero's journey. So there's no getting out of it. It is one of the one or maybe the primary archetype. If there is a primary one, then that's it. We're all called to not only face our own challenges and get past them, but to turn around and be of service to others, which is a natural process. I work with people day in, day out. Sacred calling is almost always the subject or part of the subject. And as soon as there's healing to a certain degree, doesn't have to be all the way. So don't be thinking that you need to be so perfect before you get started. That's a program. And but there will be a natural pushing up and an inspiration and a raising of energy and I can serve people this way. Wow. And it's a beautiful thing to witness. I feel very grateful for my role that way. And Missy Bear's here, and welcome to Sakone. I don't know how that is. And your soul family is here indeed, Missy Bear. So then, in addition to being a champion for the truth and freedom movement, you shared with me that you are the an overcomer of breast cancer. I like that better than the survivor word is so like ugh, in our health and weird world that we're in. And so I'd love to hear all about that, how that went for you, how you managed to come through that journey, and what that was like for you.
Thank you for mentioning the survivor. I'm not happy with that word. I think I put it in inverted commas just because I don't even see myself as a survivor as such, and also I don't think of myself as a survivor of cancer. It's more survivor of the treatment, because anyway, that's sort of jumping the gun. In 19 where we start in 1993, I'd had a mammogram. Sorry, yes. See, blanking out the words already. I've just kind of pushed it. And
those evil things. I managed to avoid ever getting one, but I just heard from women that it's like awful.
Yes. Yes. I mean, it's not something I treat myself to anymore. Yeah. There was a benign sort of lump, which they took it out, said it was benign, not a problem. And of course, once you're in that system, you because I didn't know then what I know now. As I say, this was 30 years ago, and so I was going for regular checkups, and 2 years later in 95, when I went back to the consultant after a mammogram, it was, see, I'm still trying to remember what they actually said, and I don't remember them giving the kind of bad news or whatever. It was just well, things aren't quite as they were, it's a bit different this time. And strangely enough, they got me through the surgery within a week. I think it was about a week later. And when I came out of surgery, they'd taken the lymph nodes and said, that, it's, they suggested I had chemotherapy and radiotherapy. Because I didn't know anything at the time, I just went along with it, thinking that that was the right thing to do. There's so many other parts to it, so I'll kind of jump around time-wise, but this is going through the actual experience. What is particularly interesting is that I knew at the time, somehow, it was something to do with my mindset, and it was how I approached, it was my approach, the way I thought about it and what I did. And I never at any point dropped into the, oh my God, this is awful, that kind of fear thing. I mean, not that I thought it was something wonderful, but it was almost like going into neutral. So I just kind of went into a neutral. So I just went through the process of, these treatments. I mean, not that they were fun, but I went through it. I did know that there was a message in all of this, and that I needed to do something to make changes, because I knew beforehand I was not particularly in a good place, not as happy, but I was okay. I wasn't like depressed at the same time. It was I think at the time I thought it was just a kick up the rear end to say, just get on, stop feeling sorry for yourself, and just, and then I realized I kind of, needed to make some changes. So I started to make some changes and kept making changes, and then started to dip down emotionally and realized that I needed to make a very significant change. And that led to me deciding that my marriage was a major part of the problem. And so I had to, well, I say had to, I mean, that was the right thing for me to do, to just kind of get out of that. Because, see, again, there's so many different parts to it, because also after the treatment and before actually I took that step, there was something, a kind of thought that I kept going through, which was I wanted to do something useful with my life. And there was something that I didn't feel I was doing something useful. I didn't know what that meant. I had no idea at the time. And at the same time, I still was tuned into something intuitively that was kind of giving me some kind of guidance. So I don't know if you wanted to, I mean, there's so many different parts of this to unpack.
Yeah, you're doing great. I of course find so many parallels in your story right away, but I want to let you keep going so that you can.
Okay.
I like how where you landed. You wanted to do something useful for your life. You heard that message. Not only changes, I'm assuming, to your, the way that you were being with your health and your body, but this wanting to do something useful. That's my subject right there. So if you want to keep going on that theme.
Well, and that's not, I mean, that's the other thing. I did have a young son at the time, and that's not to say that, being a mother, bringing up children, having a family is not useful. I don't mean that at all. It was just something driving me to change where I was, because it was just something driving me. So coming out of the marriage was not easy. And that was partly because of the way, my husband at the time was. So I shouldn't have been surprised that he took it rather badly. I mean, I was just shocked that he didn't realize there was a problem as well. That was a kind of, how could you not have seen it? That was just, what also transpired was, a lot of people thought, a lot of our friends thought I was mad. I mean, one particular friend said, "Oh, you're mad." I go, well, I just knew I couldn't stay, and I knew there was no way of kind of trying to make it work, because I knew how I felt once I'd made that decision. Something shifted. So I knew I had to just keep going. I had no idea what I was going to do. I didn't have a plan. It was just I've got to stop that. And what happened afterwards, of course, is that, when you close doors, other doors open, other opportunities open. And as I was going through that kind of messy phase of the early stages, I was introduced to, there was a centre in a town nearby, near where I was living, which is not where I am now, running Reiki courses, which I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. And I found it really interesting. And it really felt like it was something far more in line with me, with where I was. There was something, it just felt, okay. It just fitted where me somehow. And in fact, when I discussing this with a particular friend, she said, oh, that's much more you. It was as if I was like, okay. So I was getting that feedback of being somewhat in the right place. And that then led me to they were also running a course, David Parker at the time was running a course called About the Nature of Reality at the same centre. So that's how I was introduced to that material. And that just resonated. So it was like suddenly kind of, yes, it was as if something said, yeah, this is it. I knew it. This felt right. At the same time, the kind of home life was still rather difficult. And in the end, soon after, within a number of years, pretty much all friends and family had just kind of, disappeared from my life. Had a few new friends, but nowhere near the ones before. It also eventually cost me contact with my son as well. He just didn't want to know. So that was a major challenge, as you can imagine. And it was a decision of, shall we say, being how somebody else wanted me to be, instead of being how it was right for me to be. And I knew I just couldn't go back. I mean, I think if I'd have known at the time what would happen, it would have been harder. So it's just as well I didn't know. And then when it came to it, and I didn't just, say, oh, okay, goodbye. It was, I kept trying to make the contact, and, eventually you just say, okay, your choice. By then he was an adult. So, that's your choice. I can't force you to do anything. And that's, again, something that I've always had that kind of sense growing up of, because I've never liked being told what to do. So I don't feel it's right for me to tell other people what to do either. So you're kind of like, okay, well, so I've been, kind of working my way forward ever since, really. And it was hard, but I don't have any regrets. It was the right decision, because I wouldn't be doing what I am now.
Right. And that's, I think, why people feel in danger for their calling, in danger of their calling, like it's going to be a dangerous path. And there are very unpredictable elements that start to appear in your life, such as, the leaving of an adult child. I actually had that happen with my son as well. He was 11 at the time, and it was, one of those situations where we just had two different camps going on, and the camp over there was much less regulated, let's say. Not a lot of rules going on. And then so in this world where you don't have two parents on the same page, it's very easy for a child to just like, oh, okay, here's what I'm going to do. And I agree with you that there are things you have to force a child to do, like brushing their teeth, and is some basic care and hygiene and eating and exercise and sunshine and fresh air. All that's all I will force for. But when it came to this very tender kind of precipice for us all, I did the same thing as you. I just made an effort every single day to stay in his life and repair the relationship that had us get to that point as well was a big part of it. So just wanted to jump in. I know how painful that is, and good for you for following your path anyway.
Yes, thank you. I mean, it's that's just a kind of brief overview. Actually going through it, there were times when it was really tough. I did keep trying to make contact. I mean, maybe not daily. I mean, initially he was sharing his time between spending time with his dad and with me. His dad got the better part of the deal, and there were all sorts of issues with that, where it was obvious he wasn't happy with me. And there was some contact for a while, and eventually because of the situation he was in, it seemed appropriate that he was only with one of us, because he was taking exams and he would have different books at different places, and it was difficult for him. So knowing where he was at the time, I mean, because I'm going to say, jumping all over the place, sorry, he would he'd never make contact out of the days when, other than the days when he was, spending time with me. And yet he would always arrive at my place and then say, "Oh, can I phone Dad?" And it was just, it was almost pointedly, whatever the contact, whatever the emotion was with me, it was obviously, oh, well, I want to speak to my dad, but I don't want to speak to you or something. I don't know. So eventually I just thought, no, this is really hard. And then I moved, and when he took his stuff from wherever I was, that was it, and never heard again. That was in 2005.
Sorry to hear it.
Yeah. And I'm not saying, oh, that's all right. No, it's taken a long time, or it took a long time to get through that, and it's still not easy at the same time. He's a grown man. He made his choice, his choices. He's carrying on making choices. It's not for me. Only I kind of feel that he might be somewhat skeptical of the path I've taken now, shall we say. I think he may have been following the mainstream narrative over the last few years. So I don't know. I could be wrong. I just, I can't guess. So that was the hard part. And of course, during the intervening years, kind of have those dark nights of the soul where you just sit there. I mean, I remember many times the kind of just sitting there, head in hands, with what am I doing? Just what is going on? Because I couldn't see the way through. I mean, at the time I was doing a lot of research, starting to work on the book, or even sort of working on the book. And I still felt, because there was no obvious, it wasn't obvious that, the book was going to come out, it's sort of working on it, knowing there was, something, well, not something, I mean, it was worthwhile. It was a worthwhile effort. There was definitely something really, really important that we were putting together for the book. Only every time we kind of thought, where we were looking, we think, oh no, we've got to add this, we've got to cover this, to make it a complete package, because it's not just about the invisible enemies, it's about so much more, and it puts the whole, as much as we could, the whole kind of outline and the background and some of the history and the vested interests, and where things are controlled, and also not just the kind of European and American side of things, what's going on in other parts of the world, all these different agendas, and bringing out all the other aspects of the agenda which is not just the health side, just all the other aspects. So trying to put as many of those without overwhelming. So just to kind of give a big picture. So it meant diving into lots of other areas. And there were times we think, are we ever going to get this thing finished? And at the same time, there was, with where I was kind of physically as well, I'm not going to go into too much detail with my life circumstances. So it was, things were tough, at the same time. And, thank you very much for all these lovely comments. I appreciate it. It's lovely. At the same time, I still had an inner voice that kept saying, that was going back to the kind of, or getting through that experience. It's like, well, I got through that, so I can get through this, so it was always you've done that bit and I'm still here, so there must be a reason. And that's why I was just so grateful to have got that understanding of the nature of reality, which is the what the NOR stands for, the getting that understanding of who we are, what we are, or I don't mean understanding as in, oh, I understand it all. What I mean is enough of an understanding to be able to kind of just hold on to that and know and start trusting myself, because that's the other thing of trusting other people. Start really trusting myself and just getting through and saying, I got through that for a reason. I can't give up now. It's almost, in my less dark moments, it felt like, being in the middle of a story where you kind of, well, I want to know how this ends. I'm only in the middle. I want, I've got to keep going because I, want to know what I'm doing here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I could jump in, it's
absolutely.
That is the nature of the hero's journey. People throw around that phrase a lot, but those that are really fully engaged or more fully engaged in living it know that that's exactly what you bump up against, that you literally cannot see a way through. You cannot see a way through. And when you look back in your life, every time you felt that you couldn't see a way through or there was no way through, and you look and you see, it's actually really helpful to look back in your life when you're stuck now, because you see, oh yeah, I actually did get through that, and I got through that, and I got through that. And I've said this so many times, maybe I'll stop saying it, but it's not a tiptoe through the tulips. It's the hero's journey, right? And it's not just one challenge, it's several challenges, and can be attacks, and you have to die a whole bunch of times. It's not just even one facing of your own, mortality through your health journey, which I share, but coming out and continuing to make meaning. And somebody said to me at one point, maybe you heard me say this too, that, oh, Beth, it's so great that you got cancer and almost died, because here you are helping people in this way. And I just said, actually, no, that was a massive mistake. It didn't have to happen that way. And what I can do now is turn it into something of value for others by creating the reason that I went through it. So anyway, that's just my little sidebar there. And so carry on if you like. Yeah.
Yes, when I first heard about your journey, I think it must have been a couple of years ago, and I thought, wow, that's like really amazing. What you went through was just so much, and I kind of, oh well, mine was nowhere near as bad as that. So and I've been not reluctant, but I haven't really sort of spoken out about it. Well, I started speaking out last summer, and that had been the result of a few months of pondering it, and again thinking, well, how can that help people? Because the idea that I'd gone through the medical system, and again, there's so many different aspects to it. So I'd gone through all of that, and I didn't, because of the information I found, and we were talking about from the book, I didn't want it to seem as if I was, being hypocritical, because obviously the information now, and again, I don't advise people, I don't suggest people have to make their own choices depending on where they are. I just thought, well, how would that help people to say, well, I got through it? Because so many people know people who didn't survive, and so that was also part of it, I suppose, the kind of, what they call survivor guilt, thinking, it's like, well, I survived it, and it's like, how do I tell people, how do I say that? And as time's gone on, I've realized that there's more to it than that. It's not just, oh, look at me, I survived it. It isn't about that. There's so much more to it. And for me, the important aspect that I think is what I am moving towards sharing is how important our mindset and our approach and our ideas and our beliefs, and we're trusting ourselves, the whole sort of emotional side, and not being drawn into the fear. And I think that is a lot of what helped me at the time, because I didn't drop into the fear. I didn't, sorry, that's another missing piece. A year after we married, my mother-in-law died of breast cancer. So there was always that kind of possible kind of like maybe a bit in the back of my head, oh, I hope it doesn't happen to me. And it did. So, well, with where I am now, I've got question marks over the whole diagnosis thing anyway, but that's another issue. It's just, so maybe I wasn't aware of it being a large fear. It was just that kind of, just that thought in the back of my head. So again,
Yeah. I had the same thing as a child. I had people all around me that were medical professionals, and they couldn't even, and I'll even say it now for censorship, but they used the C word. They couldn't say the whole word. It was the C word, right? That's how frightening it was. And a young mind, I didn't have any way to really process it, but it's kind of like you, I parked a little, yep, like, hope that never happens to me thing. And I do believe that was the seed of eventually being in that exact situation.
Yes, it certainly could have been. I mean, when I was young, nobody said the word. It was the C word, and it was something that was, kept hush hush, and that was the other thing. I mean, there was nothing in the family, to indicate that there was any possibility. There was just, no one else, and. Or there was certainly no one else, with there was no history of breast cancer either. So it was just out of blue. I mean, there was no history of any. Well, my grandmother, again, see, they didn't talk about these things. My dad's mother had died apparently of some form of cancer, but I never heard much, because it was just, hush hush. They wouldn't talk about it. It was all very, kept quiet.
It is, by the way, a pretty censorable word, unfortunately, when we start talking about it. So if you don't mind resorting to the C word or something like that.
Yes. Okay, the C word. Yes. Well, yes. I mean, it's crazy that that's the C word that we can't say.
I know now for totally different reasons, right? That the demystification of it now, knowing what I know now, my journey would be just incredibly different. And I doubt I would have gone down that medical path. I'm assuming the same for you.
Absolutely. I would never have gone to somebody in a white coat in the first place. There was also, again, sorry, I forgot. I mean, there's so many pieces, and I haven't really put it all together chronologically. And then, but I suppose maybe that's not that interesting, because you can piece the pieces together. There was, lost my track where I was going with that. Yes, there was a sense before the sort of label that there was something wrong, but I didn't know what. And manifesting it physically obviously gave me the opportunity of realizing there was something else, there was something deeper, there was something more meaningful that for me to learn out of that particular part of the journey. And it's, yeah, I'm getting more comfortable with, you know, talking about it, obviously, and it's at the same time it's kind of finding all the pieces and putting them together. And sometimes, you know, like just now thinking, oh yes, I'd forgotten that part, because I'd obviously not buried it, but just sort of put it to one side and not allowing it to be part of who I am, not taking that on as my identity, not, and that's why I hesitate to use even these sort of words of you know, I am a survivor, that kind of thing. And so yes, I'm quite happy to find another term to say you know, that was something in my past, and at the same time it is definitely part of the journey, because of those times when the path looked just completely, not even murky. I mean, there was just I had no idea. And you know, again, people saying, oh, you know, you're brave. Well, I felt like I couldn't do anything else. You know, I was driven to just keep going. And even now, sometimes, you know, I don't quite know what the details are. I know I'm on the right path in a way, or I'm in the journey and open to the opportunities that present themselves, and learning what I can do with it, and again sharing what I've learned, and also what I have experienced, because it does help other people. And again, with the mind, as I say, the mindset part, the approach, our ideas, our habits, our language, certainly our language. And again, with these labels of the, you know, I am, or I've got, you know, certainly in this health sphere where people say, oh, I've got, you know, and no, because that's, and again, I like hesitate with this, because of course, obviously certain people have symptoms, and it's just attaching a label to something, and attaching that label to themselves is not always helpful to recognize what it is that we're learning from that experience, should we say. So yeah, it's a whole new way of looking at everything in our lives and our health.
It's true.
Who
Yeah.
we are, what we are, and our body, you know, just all of that.
Right. Yeah. The attachment to the figuring it out. In my world, I help people deprogram, and one of the primary root programs drives you to figure it out. Oh, I just have to, you know, learn enough. I just have to know what the diagnosis is. I need to know. And then people are so happy often when they get a diagnosis, even if it's the worst news possible, because they're like, oh, finally I figured it out. But it won't take them 3 minutes to realize they got nothing. And how many people were diagnosed with zero symptoms? Now you're saying you had some awareness that things weren't right. I also was very aware things were not right. So that, you know, wasn't the case. But for sure, my mom, she had zero symptoms, and next thing you know, they're cutting her up and they're poisoning her, and she had lifelong health problems after that. No one can say whether that would have been the case or not, but for sure that was a setback, let's just say. You know, so yeah, it's the naming and the labeling of it absolutely puts you into a state and a spell that I know our audiences are not new to that idea at all. But whether you're trying to figure it out through the medical system or the natural system, it's the same mechanism that drives you, saying that you'll be further ahead when you figure this out, rather than just like, okay, well, you know, how can I go from low energy to high energy? And that's a different kind of education process, rather than this grinding, what's wrong with me? I know I would ask myself every single day, you know, why am I a dying person? I'm doing all these right things, and still I'm in this situation. So it pushes you. So the mindset, like you're saying, is very important. And how did you shift in that way in those times?
Uh, at the beginning, while I was still in the marriage, I started to look at what I was eating, health, trying to eat more healthily, more, less processed foods, just being a little bit more aware. I didn't know then what I know now. I was just trying to learn, find out, just, like I say, just these small changes. And I can see now, looking back at it, that it wasn't so much necessarily the changes, it was the fact that I was, if you like, starting to engage in self-care. So I was looking after myself instead of, and like you rightly point out, the what's wrong with me. And when you stay in this what's wrong with me, then things carry on being wrong with you because you've set that up. And so I was looking at ways of not allowing myself to drop into this kind of low emotional state, and realized that it was, I suppose, up to me. So I don't think at the time I quite knew the extent of where things were, with the mindset of I've got to, it's up to me to make, to be okay. It's from me to be okay, because the circumstances were still not easy. And it was just a process over time of trying, as I say, trying to make some differences. And then after just a few years of realizing the major change I needed to make, which I knew it was right. There was, again, because somehow I knew the kind of my intuitive sense, I kind of learned how to listen to it. And it was when I came to that realization, I felt it was right, even though it was like, oh, how do I do this? And part of me didn't actually think too much about it, because I think if I'd have sat down and thought too much about it, it would have been harder. So I just, got on with it. And so there was that, coming across the sort of Reiki, the energy type, the energy healing. And again, that's the whole idea of healing, which means there's something wrong that needs to be healed. At the same time, there was still that connection with the energy. I mean, when I took some some Reiki courses, and I have to say, I really enjoyed that, really resonated. And I thought, this is great. I thought I'd found my thing. It was like just wonderful, and it felt very liberating. And I thought, oh, okay, empowering. I can. So this was part of, I can do something useful. I can help people through this sort of Reiki healing. And I thought, oh, great. It seemed to fit. It seemed to fit that. And that sort of started, didn't quite go very far. Then with the nature of reality, I found that, and again, that just resonated. That was like, oh, okay, so it was another shift. Because they were running courses, I learned how to actually run a course, and I ran some courses, and I really loved that. And I thought, oh, this is the thing. This is my thing. And that didn't quite go the way I thought it might have done. So you just, keep going. And then we're turning the nature of reality, that course, we turned it into a book, The Nature of Reality, that was published in 2010. And it was in the course of writing that book that David and I were looking at the body, the health, what makes us ill. Because if it's to do, we came across the work of Bruce Lipton, Biology of Belief, and thinking, okay, so if these invisible enemies aren't the problem, how does that work? Although I don't think that's what he didn't say that, and he still doesn't. It was more a question of, well, if it's to do with our beliefs, then what about these invisible enemies? So we started diving, and hence the rabbit hole that just kept widening, and that ended up in the book that, just as you say, amazingly came out. I mean, that shows divine timing, absolutely, because it was a process. And during 2019, we were, looking for ways to publish it. And at some point, I think it was fairly late 2019, late summer or something like that, that we were trying a different route, and it was just getting difficult. So we thought, okay, well, let's just try Amazon, through their system, because that's the other books were there through, we'd published them through that. So, and suddenly it was as if everything just opened up and just ran so smoothly after that. And then we got it out. It actually, Amazon sent us the email, your book is published on the 24th of December, 2019. And as we, what happened soon after, or what was happening, I mean, I wasn't really aware of much, but very early in January 2020, we realized, and we thought, wow, that was amazing timing. And of course, because of our kind of understanding, we thought, yeah, no, this it's here for a reason to do whatever. So we can't say, we can tell everybody that it can all be over in 5 minutes. And of course, no.
Of course, no. Yeah, I just want to let people know that this Amazon link here up in the chat, if you scroll up, is the direct link to purchase the book, What Really Makes You Ill. So if you want to get that, you can.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So, yes, with that, let's say, coming out, and, there are, it's not to scare people, it's to give people the information so they can make truly informed decisions. When it's up to people where they are, where they're at in their own journeys as to what they feel comfortable doing, or maybe not. Well, again, not necessarily always feeling comfortable, because if you're only sitting in what you're comfortable with, then I think we're all learning that you don't learn necessarily when you're staying in that comfortable place. And I think that's what the last 4 years has been about, to get us really moving, shifting, and coming out of that kind of complacency. Not saying necessarily everyone was complacent, but just kind of keeping going, and obviously moving slower and slower, slowly into this tyranny. And it was suddenly, oh yes, we need to do something, and a bit more. It doesn't cover the mindset part in huge detail. It's something we talk about, the stress side of things, and and it's actually something where I'm shifting more into doing, producing some kind of work in ways of sort of sharing that, how important that is, and gathering all the information on the evidence that's out there that shows just how dramatic our mindset can be in terms of how in terms of our health. I mean, there's the spontaneous remission report of the IONS, the Institute of Noetic Sciences. It's just amazing. And in that, they talk about different characteristics of people who have either not had the so-called kind of treatment, or what's called inadequate treatment, and yet still, become healthy. I'm choosing my words here. So, recovered their health, and realizing, and some of those characteristics, or most of those characteristics, are to do with the mindset and the way we approach our health, the way we approach our life, and changing the way we live, what we do, the actions that we take, and coming out of these systems of, the habits where you just, you get up, you go to work, you come back, you have something to eat, you go to bed, you get up, you know, that kind of routine stuff, and finding ways to break that routine. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's when you're in that mindset that it's just a routine, and certainly if you're not happy with the work that you're doing, and you know, it's to implement whatever actions are possible to really enjoy life and be fulfilled by life, because that's, you know, we're not just automatons, which is, you know, what we're encouraged to believe, that we're just these, you know, bags of chemicals that can be fixed by adding some extra chemicals to balance them out. And it's just, no, I mean, you know, we're electrical beings, that we're, you know, we're individual men and women, and we're all sparks, as I say, sparks of the divine. And we have, you know, we're life, you know, our life is, well, it's what we make it, it's what we choose to make it. And we do have the choices, we do have the freedom. And again, that's another thing of, oh, you know, we need to take our freedom back. Well, no, because that means you think you're not free. So it's just all these languaging ideas and these habits and phrases that we just use and think, and really to start looking and rethinking what we say, how we think, how we interact with people. Again, you know, with all the conflict and chaos at the moment, yeah, these systems are not necessarily helpful, and at the same time they are helping us recognize what we don't want. So we say, actually, well, no, I don't want that, so what can we now create to have something different?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, the comfort zone and the hero's journey, that you're not going to get the two at the same time. That's the comfort zone is more the denial or the refusal. And I like how you're talking about that. It is like being on automation, and everyone's so frightened of artificial intelligence, but we got it going on like crazy over here. You know, and if you're in that comfort zone, that's exactly what's happening. There are likely to be programs running you more than you're running you, and making decisions that are going to be outside of the realm of maybe what you've been indoctrinated with or what you've been taught, or what is the easy thing to think, right? When my parents had their own diagnoses, really frightening diagnoses, then they just basically, they didn't really read a book. They didn't look at any information. They didn't look at any alternatives. They certainly didn't want to hear about any alternatives from me. And they just turned to that guy in the white coat and said, what do I do? What should I do? And they're like, oh, okay. And I'll just do every single thing that you do, even when I'm not sick. And even when after the fact, you're giving me more poison to take care of a thing that I wasn't really sick with in the first place. Like, just none of that kind of questioning that does get you out of your comfort zone and can frankly set your nervous system right on fire. Because as soon as you're off in the wild unknown and you've taken responsibility for your own health and you've decided, like, okay, it comes down on me, I'm not going to have anybody to blame for these choices and these decisions, then, you know, and I was hearing Ben Balderson talk, shout out to the Weaving Spiders Welcome podcast that I love to take in on Saturday nights, and he was just reminding how human beings are the only animal that are half spirit and half flesh and bones, or more that animalistic kind of a side. And it's very unique. So you can't just gloss over it. It's not possible. It is going to, for the whole life, try to capture your attention, and for a good reason. So when it comes to healing, you have to have both. If we're have this and have that, never mind how they interact, that is probably extremely poorly understood. Odin's alchemy, you got it. Then, you know, it's a whole frontier of getting out of your comfort zone. And that's something that I personally, I like to do. When I was in Mexico at Acapulco, someone was doing trapeze, teaching people how to fly. Now, not real scary stuff. It's literally just lay back in a hammock and get spun in several ways at a time. And my mind, the first thing I said to myself was like, no, not doing that, because I I'm going to get sick doing that. And then I'm like, well, then I must do that. And so I did it. I lasted 4 entire minutes before I thought I was going to lose my cookies. And then yesterday we went tobogganing. We're on the farm that I spent time at, and this hill was 60-degree angle, like crazy angle. And normally I wouldn't do that, and I did that twice with our little guy friend out there. And it's just a good exercise to get yourself out of your comfort zone, wherever that is, right? There's certain arenas you end up feeling very comfortable and very learned. For me, like I could literally roll out of bed and coach somebody. But when it comes more to the physical thing, that's where I need to take more risks. And anyway, back to you. If I interrupted you, just about the beliefs and those that are limiting, those that are not obviously of harm to the health, or are assisting in the health.
Yeah, no, I mean, you didn't interrupt. It was just so incredible how powerful that all is, and then recognizing, we have the power, and it's really, as you say, everyone's on their own hero's journey. We're at different stages, and I think that's one of the things that's may have been a little bit bumpy over the last few years, of people wanting everyone to be at the same place. We've got to get everyone awake, wake everyone up, because we've got to get whatever it is, get out of this. And it's recognizing that, first of all, it's not essential for everyone, and it's not for us to tell other people where they should or shouldn't be. And knowing again that we are creating our own experiences, and each of us has our own unique experience, and we're so used to the idea that we're all the same, having the same experience, when of course we're not. Because I mean, that's the whole idea of being brought up, and again the indoctrination runs so deep. And so that's again something I'll come back to that.
I could interrupt again with that.
I'll stay with that, because there was always, again, these little thoughts, and I've not really necessarily been aware of them, thinking that, I suppose because I assumed everyone had the same thoughts, but I had this, I don't want to be I'm not just a cog in a wheel or something, and yet I almost allowed myself to just drift into becoming a cog in a wheel. So I suppose you have to go through these processes to then kind of go, oh no, this is not for me. So it is that we're in that easy comfort part, and that is, of course, as you say, part of the journey, as I'm learning that, of course. And then when you feel you are called, to deny that calling. And in some ways, I suppose I've done that in different stages, being a little bit reluctant, thinking, who am I to be talking about all this? So many other people, other people know more than me, and that again is I suppose, just the defense mechanism, whatever it was, of smalling myself. But that, and which is actually quite amusing, because I am actually reasonably short, but so the sort of smalling myself is a physical manifestation. And yet at the same time, there was something inside of me just rebelling against that thought that I'm, a cog in a wheel. So it's like, I'm not. So again, these inner conflicts, these inner battles, the kind of, and then you get the inner critic on your shoulder just going, who do you think you are? And, oh, okay, so I just back off, because there's plenty of other people doing all of this. And then, you get drawn. I mean, I remember as a sort of teenager at school, getting quite passionate about certain topics, and pontificating, and felt like I was like getting on my soapbox for whatever it was. There were certain things I felt strongly about, and felt that I was being kind of ridiculed by my so-called friends. So that in a way maybe kind of made me feel reluctant to step up again. And because, you know, even though when you have an experience like with the sea thing, getting through that and going, well, I got through that, whereas other things you go, well, I got put down for that, so I won't do that again. And realizing, no, it's time to step up and be what I feel I'm here for, if that makes sense. And again, I'm still struggling with that kind of, because it's not coming from a you know, position of, oh, I've got to, you know, I've got to do this. It's just, it feels I've got to do this.
Yeah, the hero is almost always the unlikely one that doesn't elect themselves necessarily, or you know, you do in a cooperation that God is literally calling you and telling you day after day that you have to do something that might make no sense at all, or that you have to do something and you don't even know what it is. You just that you have to do something. I lived with urgency a lot in my life and kept uncovering what that was. And so that, yeah, when you get that voice, who am I to be talking about this or educating people? And I like how you call that smalling yourself, that it is inevitable for anybody that is on a path of purpose. Your deepest insecurities are going to come up. It's like clockwork. There's no way around it, and you don't want a way around it. Even though it's the most painful thing to, you know, turn and doubt yourself and go like, "Oh yeah, I thought I had something to say, but who am I?" That's that's why people take no risk on their hero's journey, because they don't want to face those doubts and that part of themselves that wants to, you know, just be small and quote unquote safe because of that. Right? That stuff has to come up. Why? So that you could actually release it, so you could see through it, so you could heal of those self-doubts. And it doesn't mean, you know, actually this was the punchline when I give the workshop on the archetypes of controlled op that we never got to, because in Acapulco it was a little bit messy on that stage, and the time wasn't there. But it's that, you know, we walk with two main qualities, two major qualities, not the only main qualities, but you know, one is certain about who we are and what we're doing and why we're doing it, and the other is totally not certain about who we are and why we're doing what we're doing. And those two actually coexist as the masculine and the feminine archetype. And so you have to contend with that, and there's a whole lot of healing that can take place through it as well. So I just appreciate that you made it through that door and didn't let it stop you, because I know there's a lot of people that do.
Yes, I have, as I say, no idea how. I know it was the right thing for me to do, because it's just so different from anything in my upbringing, which is just so kind of ordinary. And at the same time, I knew that I didn't kind of fit that pattern, which is difficult. I've seen in the chat people doing, there's a mention of The Body Keeps the Score. I mean, those sorts of books, yes, you know, they're a lot of the information that I've been gathering in those sorts of books of how our mind affects, or the way our thinking, our ideas affect our body far more than necessarily what we eat and drink and expose ourselves to. And that's, yes, again, I'm not saying that, oh, we can eat and do anything. It's the way I see it is that when you start realizing who you are, and that you choose to improve your health, you'll start looking at things that are more supportive of your health. So it's more to support the body in the way of self-care. So you know, you're loving yourself and caring about yourself, and so that's where, you know, that energy is what you're then putting into your body when, you know, with what you eat and drink, and you're less likely to be fearful of your environment. Although I'm not saying that that's you can, expose yourself to anything. It's with this balance of understanding or appreciating where you are, because there are some people are much more fearful about everything, and their systems are not as robust, and so they're more likely to be affected by what the external environment, as we know from the terrain idea or the terrain model. It's not an idea. I mean, it's the way the body works, and it is also how the mind affects that as well. So it's being strong in your thoughts and your beliefs, and yet not denying where you are. It's not kind of ignoring how you can't say, oh well, I know, be careful here, sorry, I was about to say, so I'm just gonna be careful. You can expose yourself to certain things, and that's okay, and it won't hurt you. Well, not if you that still have that down as in your list of things that are poisons, for example. So again, it's not to be rash and careless at the same time, to recognize that we have much more agency over our own health. And absolutely, when I say the mind, I'm not talking about the brain either, because again, I've found information of a number of articles. I mean, just a small search didn't take me too long to find, was it 5 or 6 articles of people who were found to have most of their brain missing, and yet they were still functioning. And one was a student in, I can't remember, I think in the UK, in England, I think it was at Warwick University, he was found to have an IQ of 126 and most of his brain missing. And
I love that.
yes, yes, at which point I thought, oh, okay, very interesting. Also, what's interesting is the fact that the condition that a lot of these people with most of their brain missing, they had a condition, hydrocephalus, so water on the brain as it's called, which just goes to show that there's something very magical about water, that liquid. And so I don't know the answer. I don't know how that works. I'm just putting that out there, that it's very interesting that these people, and certainly, one highly intelligent young guy was able to function at a very high level with most of the brain missing. So I'm not saying, the brain isn't useful. It certainly is. It just maybe doesn't quite work the way we think, or else there's something else going on for these people that yes, I as I say, I don't have the answer. I just find it fascinating, and shows us that there's more to us than just these functional bits and pieces. And again, the mind, I know I kind of regard it as being kind of within the inner biofield, which again somebody mentioned before as well. So we're learning so much more about us being so much more. And
yeah, even right down to the basics of, like, the water isn't what we thought it was, and right, that classic H2O description is so flat and goes absolutely nowhere and describes nothing of the true miracle that we see of water every single day in our life. And it's the same of the body. That is, so in a way, it's a beautiful field to be in, that you are in right now, because it's kind of wild, right? That the understanding is at such a low level for the most part, and there's so much room to break ground and see from new interactions. And again, back to Ben Balderson's work, how he's been able to really put the practical and the mystical side together, the so-called mystical side, which is really the practical side. Mystery notwithstanding, because you can know all the best things and have the deepest understanding, and you still can be caught in a pickle that will be humbling you right to the core. And I think that's a massive part of the hero's journey, is to get to that place of of surrender, where you're saying, okay, I really don't know. I have no clue. I'm putting one foot in front of the other. I'm following breadcrumbs on God's path, and they're not very big, and the crows get them, and there's very little to hang on to. And then at some point you realize, like, the hanging on itself is a cost. For me, I've really studied energy, what gives life energy, and what takes energy away. What removes, what gives vitality, what removes vitality. And seeing that there are, for the most part, on the path of purpose, there are so many elements that would otherwise take energy that actually give life. And it can be the very same thing. I think I wrote about this in my book as well, that I published in 2019. By the way, I was just a few months behind you. Also felt like it was somehow urgent, and it was now, could have been now, or not, maybe not never. I bet I would have got back to it by now. But that, when you are doing something, say, what was I eating, the cake or the chocolate or something like that, but I was doing it in service to be able to, get the next chapter edited, or I can't remember exactly where I was at, but it was a really full, like, absolutely fulfilling process. But that was the hedonist chapter in my book. And it wasn't fulfilling just because my tongue liked it and it gave me hits of dopamine or whatever it is that we get from sugar, but it was in service. It was this much bigger mission that I had, and all of the healing for myself, and never mind anybody that could benefit as well. So even the same thing that we will call, oh, this is good and that's bad, I feel like I'm no longer in that path, that it's all about motive. And this is a subject I'm speaking about later today in my private association. Motive is everything.
I agree with you on the good and bad, and I think that's why a lot of people fail in, if you like, diet certain lifestyles, because they think I've got to eat this because that's good for me, and or else they're just having the certain oh well they're being virtuous because that's what they're eating and it's good for me, and yet there's something inside them that is not in alignment with that statement. They're denying themselves sometimes. So I will eat chocolate. I like chocolate. I don't eat it all the time. I enjoy it, and again, it's sometimes I eat a little, sometimes I eat a little bit more than a little, and it's not denying yourself, because when you say, oh, I mustn't do that because I'm not supposed, again you're setting up this conflict, and that's going to have some kind of impact. That's going to manifest as something for you to then look at, to realize that you are not looking after yourself if you're denying yourself something. And
Right.
this it's just there's a huge area. I mean, it's a huge area on how we feel about things and what we're doing, why we're doing them. As you say, motive, so huge.
Exactly, because that's what I discovered about myself when I was facing my death. I was told I wasn't going to survive without a stem cell transplant. And I had been doing all the best things, the best diet, the best therapies, spending thousands and thousands of dollars on natural medicine. But here I was, still a dying person. It's like, what's going on here? And I finally saw my own inner motive, that I was doing all of these fantastic things out of fear. And that's even where there's denial, it is some kind of fear. It's just at a deeper, less visible level. There's so much about ourselves that we have never seen before, and it's an endless discovery as far as I can tell. But that inner push, when I turned it around, and instead of doing the best things for myself because I was afraid to be sick and die, I flipped it around. Well, what if I did this because I love life? What if I did this because I love the future calling that I feel bubbling up inside of me? What about just love for myself, which is kind of loaded and highly programmed as a subject to, maybe one day I'll crack the well, I've cracked the code, but I'll speak on that. So yeah, when you make that commitment to the hero's journey, it really is a commitment to knowing, not just knowing who you are, but where you are on that path, because also the right thing at the wrong time is not the right thing. And being able to recognize that is a very helpful, super helpful to be literally where you are at. And so what would be breaking ground for you at this time, Don? What are you researching these days? What are you studying? What's getting you out of your comfort zone?
Oh, I
No pressure.
yeah, I am looking at all the information about how powerful our minds are and how we can put that into practice. I think it's again marrying the physical and spiritual, if you like, and not seeing them as separate. And our experiences in this realm are every much as much a part of our, if you like, spiritual journey as any other kind of practice. So it's not about escaping into a spiritual practice, and it's not denying those, it's marrying them and realizing that we then can express ourselves fully here as free men and women, and realizing the traps, the indoctrination, how the indoctrination does limit us, and how we can come out of that by recognizing how we speak, how the words we use, how we think, some of the ideas we have, and also to be open to lots of different ideas, because we're often told that, you know, there's only this one way. And so, well, if it's not this one thing, what is the other one thing? Well, it isn't a one thing. There are lots of ideas that we can implement to create, if you like, the kind of world we want to see. So it's that quote, you know, it's attributed to Gandhi, even though apparently he didn't say these words, but be the change you want to see, and realizing it comes from us. And that goes back to what you were saying about how we're taught not to be selfish. If you think of yourself and look after yourself, you're being selfish. And really to recognize that if we don't look after ourselves, then we can't look after anyone else. You know, just how could you possibly? From both perspectives, that if you don't know how to look after yourself, then how can you know how to look after someone else? And also, if you don't look after yourself, you haven't necessarily got the strength, the ability to look after other people. So it's looking at developing different ways of us, you know, coming together to put out different workshops of just exploring these ideas and being able to just open up, get people to sort of open up to seeing things differently and gaining more insights, trusting themselves, and just going on that sort of path. That's one aspect. I mean, I'm also looking at the other ways of putting freedom-minded solutions into action, although I'm, you know, in the early stages of that, and I know that's something you're obviously you're doing. And again, with everything being in the private and looking at those, I mean, I'm not talking about those, that's something I'm learning and looking into, and it is to be able to live the way we want to do, and to recognize, you know, we are free, and at the same time recognizing where we are at any one time, so we can come out of the system and at the same time use it as we are now for our benefit. You know, kind of, well, we couldn't connect otherwise, and so we said, well, this is useful, and at the same time still follow different ideas of how to create systems that are based on freedom, so we can kind of transition. It's always a transition, and really the experiences that we have in this realm are all based on how we think of ourselves, our thoughts, our ideas, our belief systems, and learning to, helping people, us all, working together, learning how we can come out of those limiting belief systems and finding new ways to go forward, keep learning forward and growing and developing and being free, not just wanting to be free, wanting our freedom, being it. So it's putting those kinds of ideas together.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, it's one of my discoveries that wanting freedom and being free are actually very closely related, strangely related. Because if you want anything else, including your safety and your health and good relationships and love and control over your life, all of that takes you pretty sideways. But as soon as you really want freedom, whatever that means to you, I've also discovered how I can't come and just impose my definition of freedom on somebody and get them to want that. It's got to be something that we're really internally tuned with. And one of the things I was aware of also is that there's many paths to healing. And God didn't just create one door to healing. God created like all the doors to healing. In fact, everything that we experience inside ourselves, from the, this is my soapbox, you probably heard that, the low frequency that causes disease and suffering and the high frequency that causes enlightenment. It's like so bullshit, excuse my language. But this whole system is so rigged in our favor that you can find freedom on the other side of the lowest possible experience. Now, it's not as likely that you're going to find it that way. So yes, you do have to raise your frequency to a point where you're actually courageous enough to go and do the hard inner work. I also just want to reflect what you talked about, it, you heal thyself. And this is a very big part of my world. The nurturer archetype got a chapter in my book. Almost everybody in my world struggles with the nurturer because they're helping spirits. They actually want to support others and see them get to a higher place. But you're so right that if you are not strong yourself, then everything you give is literally going to take away from you and the other. People don't realize that you're not really helping when you're, say, enabling someone. So those are very big lessons. And then I like that you're diving into the freedom in the private. And I've been down that rabbit hole. Hit me up for a tea or a chat if you'd like to hear anything like about what the rabbit holes not to follow. It's mostly what I've learned in that respect. And yeah, and freedom itself, DE is saying like how we will fear freedom. Unfortunately, that's one of the things, because why, you can help me flesh this out, but we're so incredibly unfamiliar with it. So it's the unknown right there. And it comes with great responsibility. Why else do you think that people fear freedom?
Absolutely, it's exactly that, because it's it requires people to take responsibility and make their own decisions, and we're not provided with the tools to be able to do that from an early stage. And at the same time, people in our space, shall we say, I've found, when the more I've spoken to them, are of the type where they were, I suppose you could call them rebels when they were younger. The system didn't work for them. So it's quite good that, there are at least some people who aren't trapped into that system. And so, yes, it does take courage, and not everyone is in the right space. And at the same time, maybe at a different time, they'll sort of come through. I think for me, it tended to need something that was quite dramatic to shake me up, because I mean, I hope I haven't come across as sounding like I was a miserable person. I mean, I wasn't. I'm pretty kind of easygoing, which is probably why I just drifted into all these different situations, and wasn't at the same time. I didn't have. And only now I'm starting to, you know, somebody says, well, you know, what career do you want? Or career, you know, the careers advice at school was completely rubbish, and even for years afterwards, kind of, well, what do you want to do? I don't know, because I didn't like the sound of the things, you know, choices I was given, and so I just went with the lesser of two evils. The choices I was given, I was good at. Thank good. I mean, I was fairly general in terms of my sort of education, fairly good at sort of across the board, even though I loved reading, always loved reading. So what I'm doing now is not difficult, because I, you know, love diving into books and learning. And yet somehow it was picked up on the sort of my ability with maths. And I was given two choices. The careers advice was two choices, either an accountant or an actuary. I didn't know what an actuary was. And when I looked it up, I thought, you know, statistics on dead people, you know, in a nutshell. I was like, no, thank you. So it was, you know, the other choice by default. So it was the lesser of two evils. And it never quite sort of suited me. I did my best, and it's, you know, just fell into the rut. And of course, you know, you can't, if your heart isn't in it, you can't really kind of make it, as it were. You can't make it be something if it's not right. So again, sorry, I've drifted completely off where we started with this. I'm sorry.
Not a worry, not a worry. No, and there comes a point where you cannot tolerate anymore. There was a time when you can tolerate, right? I spent a decade in my family's business where I was completely out of alignment with myself, and I knew it, and the pressure was building, but somehow I still showed up there every single day. I kept following through with the contracts. I kept receiving the monetary reward for that. And then all of a sudden it was like literally banging my head in the mornings going, how do I get out of this? How do I get out of this? But still I didn't. God's going like, Beth, just leave, go. And instead I'm banging my head. And then so like you, it had to come to a place of a total breakdown, total crisis, that I realized like that was unnecessary. I didn't have to do that. And you know, so what do we have to go through? Some people say, oh, we have to make all our own mistakes. And actually, I don't think that's true. I think we can watch each other make mistakes and go like, oh, that won't be my mistake. There's one or two I've been able to really seriously avert making myself, because I studied how that went for someone else out of a compassion, not a judgment, but just going like, wow, are they teaching me right now exactly how I don't want to move forward with something that otherwise I might have, blew up in my path.
Yes, I can identify with that. I mean, that's where anger for me is something I've been working with, learning about. It was very much part of, growing up, lots of anger around me, and I just saw what it did, and I knew it was destructive. At the same time, getting angry and kind of wondering what to do with it. And it's, that's learning how to process our emotions, what they're telling us, what they are, what we do with it. It's like you say, this is a journey. This is not I've worked that one. No, I haven't worked it out. I'm learning. I'm still learning, and one of the things I'm learning is to listen more quickly and to hear the messages before they get so loud that it hurts.
You got it. You got it. Right. That's we're always getting the signals, and they can be tiny little signals. And then if you're listening at that level, then you can catch them earlier, or you can decide not to, and you see yourself deciding not to. And let's see how this experiment goes when I roll that ball down the hill. Oh, there it goes again, and I have to go get it. I recently, I had rolled a ball down the hill, and I was seeing it, and I could see it, and I keep joking myself, because what would I tell a client right now? What advice would I give them in this situation? And I knew exactly what it was. And, it's one of the levels that we can definitely help each other with, because sometimes until you get a strong reflection from someone outside of yourself, then we can somehow, outside of the context of a connection, somehow be in deeper levels of denial, or think that somehow we're different, or this is a different situation or something like that. But in reality, there aren't that many different situations going on, right? We're all unique and individual, but it's breaks down into some very discrete, recognizable patterns that people create. And that's why I love the archetypes as a map. And it was one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, Dawn, today. You redid the quiz at my website on the King Hero's Journey Archetypes, and you came up with the king. So that's fascinating and not surprising. Also, when I saw that, I'm like, yep, that rings true. What did you feel about it? I don't know if you had a chance to look into my description of it at all.
Yes, I watched your short video, and and I appreciate the fact that you say, everyone's got that archetype, so it doesn't mean, oh, I'm special, I'm a king. It's just I'm at that phase of my journey, and at the same time, I did recognize that there was something. Yeah, I thought, oh yes, okay, that is where I am, because I'm stepping into doing, being, serving. I think I'm at a stage where I can now be of service, and I think for me, I'm I like learning, and I think I suppose I have thought, let's just say I have thought that I need to know it all before I can share it, because I don't want to be wrong, I don't want to mislead people. I don't want to be wrong, make a mistake. And now I'm thinking, well, no, because you never know everything. And so I just, get to the point where you feel, yeah, okay, I've gained enough. I can always add to it, of course. And now I'm at a place where I can share, because what's the point of the learning unless you actually do something with it? So the learning is not just from the books, it's putting, the practice and my experiences, putting it all together. And really just, and I was aware of the shadow sides, and see, it's going to sound boastful, but I'm not in that control over. I've always recognized the control over, and it's not something I tend to do, and I'm being more mindful of the way I express myself, so that it doesn't come out as if I'm trying to, as I say, tell people what to do. It's, again, as a freedom-minded person, here's some information, and also, so it's, yeah, that kind of, that I'm in that place where it did resonate. And again, as I say, aware of some of the shadow side, so I'll be careful with those. They aren't my tendencies. My tendency is more to be sort of stepping back and not, and so it is now time to step in and step up, up my game, and just say, okay, this is my part of the puzzle of everyone. And with what you were saying with the with other people, from my understanding of how this all works, is that we even with other people, that they're providing us with the feedback to help us learn about ourselves. So if you have particular clients, or you have conversations with certain people, I'm always aware that there's it's a two-way interaction, that we're each learning from each other. So if somebody, like, for example, has a problem or whatever it is, and wants to share something, I know there's something in there for me to learn about me. And so as I'm expressing suggestions or ideas or thoughts, then I'm aware that there's something in there for me. And I'm also, again, that's getting better with listening to intuition, because sometimes just ideas of what to say or what to ask just turn up. And it's great when that happens, and they just say, wow, that's just what, oh yes, that was just what I needed to hear, or something like that. And it's great when that happens, because then you kind of, it's the intuition is working. Those pathways are clear, getting clearer.
Those
And
are great moments. Yeah, those are great
oh,
moments when you're like, I don't know why I'm writing this today, and I don't know if anybody's gonna get this at all. And then someone comes along like, oh wow, needed to hear that. And I'm just was appreciating as you're talking also how that there's that precipice where there might be more of a comfort zone, and you have like such a great book and publications behind you and a lot of work under your belt, and then something presses up and gets you back into that place out of the comfort zone to potentially take more responsibility, serve more people. And like you were saying, I don't mean, I'm not seeing the shadow of power on you. Like you said, you're not a wanting to dominate others kind of a person. I really, yeah, totally don't see that in you. But nonetheless, we all have to contend with personal power. And how does that show up? And how, what is the power relationship that we have, and the turning to God, that is the ultimate relationship to have around power, where you're in constant check. You're allowing reflection to come direct from the source, and likely from other people, because as soon as you put yourself out there, everybody's got something to say about it, and something to say about you. And how do you manage and handle that? And with everybody wanting to relieve responsibility for their own health, especially, less so in this community because it's more oriented towards taking care of yourself. But to be in that role of giving people advice and guidance and all of that kind of thing, which I have a ton to say about as well. That's a big subject I won't get into, but I just wanted to address one comment. Unfortunately, we can't see the Rockfin comments over here on the main platform, but somebody said about that many people, speaking of archetypes, many people in the truth community, or majority of the truth community, think Jungian psychology is all nefarious programming. And for the most part, I would agree with that. And I will cite Jung out of courtesy to say that he popularized the word archetypes. I don't see archetypes particularly like him. And Jungian people never like me. You can't believe how many times they have brought me out to, like hired me for a talk or a workshop or something like that, and then cancel when they get to know me better. Like they never want to follow through. So I get it. I just wanted to speak to that Jung was an elite in a world where he was privileged. That there's a lot there. I won't go deep into it, but I was happy to see the king come up for you, because I feel like it is your time to step into greater leadership, and gives you a chance to see what's up ahead of you. The next archetype on the hero's journey is the alchemist, and it's a calling to much deeper levels of healing, and taking the pieces and parts that seem all separate, and not bringing them together as wholeness, but seeing and feeling the wholeness of our beings that really has been taken away from us in many ways. So I'm excited for your future, and I look forward to all of the work that comes out of that.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Just one point you were saying about the criticism, and I've realised, of course, that the criticism I received as a result of deciding to come out of my marriage has obviously helped me. I've gone through that, and I've come through that. So maybe that helps me with the criticism that is that may be thrown at me. It's not, I'm not hardened by it, but just more or less affected by it. I've kind of, so again, looking at the experiences, how they help us, when you can look at them and think, well, I've got through that, and it gives you that again, the right kind of comfort factor that I have gone through that experience. I'm okay. I'm here now. I don't have to fall into that. So yeah, sorry, it was just, again, it's a good point how we face the criticism, what we do with it.
And that's fantastic. You haven't been hardened by the hardship, because that is a possibility, a very real one, that many people just get bitter, and they stop engaging with their audience, and they turn a blind eye to anybody's feedback of any kind, and they just say, well, I hate everybody, or I don't care about anybody anymore, or I don't care what you say. I'm kind of the opposite. I love to get people's feedback. And of course, good feedback is always more palatable. But the bad feedback, or the bad reflections, or the outright attacks and the takedowns, and there have been an unprecedented number of takedowns over the last 4 years. I just want to emphasize the point that every time you go through something and you don't allow it to harden you, but rather you you get softer, you get more porous. Now, you don't get like more wishy-washy, or less of a mission about your topic, or less conviction, or all of that kind of stuff. It's just that the things can flow through you a little better. And yeah, I've been through so many showstoppers that I thought were like the end of it, and it just kept not being the end of it. And I always, sooner or later, and usually it's sooner these days, get myself to a new place and create something, and take the lesson that is there, accept it, move on. You get even more polarizing, so that people like genuinely dislike me enough to get the heck away. Just go somewhere else, because this is so not your world. And then the people who can resonate and make use of what I have to offer, they can get in closer, and there can be more time and space for that. So it's not the easy path by any means when you decide to step into that king thing. And like you're already saying, you've been through it several times. It's a spiral. It's not like, aha, I arrived and I'm the king now. It's not even the end of the journey, and the end of the journey is not the end of the journey either. That's the beginning of the journey again. So I appreciate so much what you've brought to us and our community. I can't even imagine how far behind we might be on the whole, germ theory psyop, that they could pandemic us every 5 minutes if we wanted to, if we kept having that perspective. So thank you so much for your contribution. It's been invaluable. Huge. And you can see how many, it's just mushroomed out, how many people have really got on that bandwagon and helped the cause, so to speak. And I started seeing it as a sign of controlled op. If you really need us to believe in this that cannot be proved, that has no basis in scientific fact and history, and doesn't explain why one person gets sick and the other one doesn't, why, it's so much more highly nuanced than that. So your work is fantastic. Is there anything else that you want to share with us before we start to close the interview?
It certainly was a very important aspect of the work to learn just how corrupt the system is, how wrong it is, the whole basis of it. And because I like to kind of simplify things, it's to say, okay, that system is wrong. It's based on something. So let's not fight about the little details. Let's just say, okay, let's look at how, how the body works, how we function, what we can do, looking at, and it's not ignoring reality. It's finding ways to not give it too much of our attention, and to look at, sometimes people say, kind of, oh, you're such an optimist. Well, what's the point of being here if you're not an optimist? I've always had this kind of, being of the feeling of being an eternal optimist. So it's, it's good. It helps. It doesn't mean I'm always, up and bouncy, and, I have bad days, I'm on this journey, and it's not a, straight line, or even straight line up. It's, it waves, and recognizing it as a journey, not an end game, and learning what learning what I can learn from the journey and incorporate that into the work that I'm going forward. And I'm looking at developing all kinds of workshops and courses and all sorts of different things at the moment. It's fairly early stages, so I'm excited. This is a new phase, and I'm really excited to see what I can, create with, collaborations with other people, what we can create to learn our way forward.
Fantastic. That's beautiful. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knows about dawnlester.substack.com. So if you haven't visited there, that's where she's currently writing and sharing her articles. This is the book that she co-authored with David Parker. Did I get that correct?
Yes.
Yes. What Really Makes You Ill is available on Amazon. We talked about it. It's like Aikido, using the enemy against itself, and for very good reason. And then this is a website that you said is not too much going on yet, but lots to come. So please do keep me posted.
On the What Really Makes You Ill, that's for the book. There are quite a lot of interviews, blog articles and things. That's not where either of us are focusing our attention at the moment, because we're both moving off in slightly different areas to develop our own our own sort of separate body of work, because we have, because everyone's different, we have different sort of perspectives, and so we're developing in similar but different directions, if you like.
Yeah, that's ongoing, similar but different. Yeah.
Well, yes, it's all about exploring who we are and learning, and it's just because we're different people, so we have different ways of expressing ourselves, which is fine. So we'll which adds to the mix, rather than just one perspective. It's separate perspectives, and I think a lot of us are maybe saying sort of similar things. It's just that we've got different ways, different approaches, different ways. We're coming at things from different angles, different emphases, and so we're all helping each other come out of this system and develop, create anew, create forward, create from freedom, from a place of freedom.
Amen. You're singing my song right there. Exactly. Well, fantastic. I really enjoyed speaking and meeting with you. Do keep me posted on what's happening. I know I see you at every turn. We're all in the same chats and the same podcasts, enjoying what's going on there. This coming Thursday, I'm hosting Steve Falconer, who I had a chance to spend time with at an Acapulco. Looking forward to that. I'm not sure what exactly our topic is going to be. I know he has a lot of research under his belt, but we'll get that going. And I think that's all for now. If anybody is not familiar with the House of Free Will, that is my private domain association where we're getting to know each other more. You're most welcome, Dawn, if you have any calling to come and get to know people there. We do workshops that are not available in the public, and it's all solutions oriented. We have weekly fellowship to connect, and yes, it's Zoom, but there are some very beautiful relationships developing, and it's been really satisfying. I'm glad I did it. It was one of those like, how do we get out of here moves? And it's not what I thought it was. It's a big subject. There's actually a good workshop in there on the private domain and the realities of it, not the fantasy that a lot of us have been fed, that's not based in anything real and true. So I once again, thank you for joining, Dawn, today. It's been fantastic. Thanks everyone in the chat for your comments and thoughtful feedback. And I'm sorry, Wolfgang, I lost track of some of your interviews, but I do appreciate your presence, and I'm glad you caught us live. Thanks, Jennifer, as well. All right. Have a great rest of your day, everyone, and we'll see you back here on Thursday. Bye for now.